Welcome everyone to our lecture on the chapter of laws of motion. Today we are going to start from the topic forces and some examples in the real life. So we were taking some examples in the last video also, and like the breeze which sways the branch of a tree when a wind is flowing in air, then the wind particles exert a force on the branch of the tree, and that is a force. Next example which we can think about, in which forces come into play in cases of real life. So when a boat is moving in a flowing river, then without anyone rowing that particular boat, the boat would automatically move in it. So that is because the particles of the river would exert a force on the boat. So again, there is some forces acting on a body which causes it to accelerate. Next example can be a ball released from the top of a building and it accelerates downwards towards earth. So from these examples, what or from the last example specifically, we can learn is that external agents or external agencies can exert a force on a body when they act even from a far distance. Like in the case of ball which is released from the building. So the earth is exerting a force on the ball even though the ball is not in contact with earth. So now we come to the various ideas which were developed in the cases of motion in the area of motion. So one of the first ideas which was developed by Aristotle. So Aristotle developed the idea uh, which is today known as Aristotle's fallacy. Aristotle he held the view that if a body is moving, then something external is required to keep it moving. So his idea came from some observations which were commonplace, that if there is a very heavy rock or a heavy block of stone which is kept on ground, then there is a huge requirement of manpower. A lot of manpower is required to move the stone, to shift the position of the stone from one point to another. And if the force being exerted on the stone or on the block is removed, then the block suddenly stops moving altogether. That means if we are not exerting a force constantly on the body, then it is not moving at all. So from that he derived the idea that if something body is moving, then something external is required to keep it moving. So this was a pretty uh, old idea, I would say, that it was framed in the year 300 BC. So in 300 BC or 400 BC, in between that, these ideas must have been framed. Roughly 2000 years after Aristotle came Galileo Galilei, and he gave the law of inertia. So, as per the law of inertia, if the external force acting on a body, which we can represent as F or simply F external, if the external force acting on a body is zero, then a body which is in a state of rest would continue being in state of rest, or a body moving in a straight line in uniform motion would continue moving in that straight line. So that was Galileo's idea. So how did he come about this idea? So he did a simple experiment. What it was, he took a smooth incline and he added one more incline at the other end of this surface, and from one end of this incline a block or a small ball was released. So this small ball was released from some height h, and he observed that as the ball goes moving in the on the smooth surface, then until and unless it reaches the surface h, it does not stop moving until and unless it reaches the height h, it won't stop moving. In the same way, when in the same incline, if the angle of inclination of the second incline is decreased, if we flatten the second incline, then again what was observed was that if a ball is released from some height h, then the ball won't stop moving unless it has achieved the same height as it is started from. So from this idea, he concluded that if the ball is moving in such a manner that there is no it has no possibility to reach height h whatsoever, then it should not stop at all. So he theorized that if the second incline is flattened in such a way that now if the ball is released from h height, then the ball uh, should not stop, that it should continue moving for all the time, as it is never going to reach the height h. We have flattened the incline such that its inclination is 0, so we can say that it would reach height h at infinity, so it won't stop moving at all. So from this he concluded that since there is no external force acting on this ball, the normal force and weight are cancelling out, the ball would continue moving in a straight line until unless there is no net external force acting on the ball. So this was Galileo's law of inertia, and the property of mass, which represents this idea that the bodies would continue moving in a straight line unless some external force acts on it. That property is called inertia. So this statement was picked up by Newton. So Newton gave the first law from this particular statement only, and he stated that every body continues to be in a state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled by some external force to act otherwise. So until some external force is acting on a body, uh, the body would continue being in its state of rest or continue being in its state of motion. So that was Newton's first law of motion. Next, let us talk about frame of reference. So in this chapter, we are going to study two frames of references, and basically by study, what the word study we mean is that any question which we do can be done in two frames of references, depending upon which frame of reference is more convenient or more easier to study with. So the inertial frame of reference, which we say inertial frame of reference is the one in which Newton's first law is valid. That is, if there is no external forces acting on the body, then there should be no change in state of motion of the body. Next, we come to the idea of momentum. So some of you may be knowing momentum is defined as mass into velocity. It is denoted by symbol p. And since we know that velocity is a vector quantity and mass is a scalar, that means momentum is also a vector quantity whose direction is represented by the direction of velocity. So let us take a small example to study momentum. So you have two balls. Let's say you have ball number 1 and you have another ball number 2. Now the ball number 2 is a plastic ball. It is a pretty light ball, and ball number 1 is a leather ball. It is a heavier ball. So we know that mass of ball number 1 is greater than mass of ball number 2. So what we have done is that we have taken both these balls on the beach, and on the beach we have given both these balls some velocity. Mass m1 is given a velocity v1, some velocity, and the lighter one is given a greater velocity v2. Now these velocities are given in such a way that they enter into sand and they travel the same distance within the sand. So this is the sand, and we have given the velocities v1, v2, and they have adjusted in such a way that the lighter ball has traveled the same distance as the heavier ball. And it is pretty evident from the common experience the heavier ball would automatically travel higher distance since it's heavier. So to adjust that, we have given more velocity to the lighter ball. So they are traveling the same distance within the sand, and the combination which we have achieved by using the mass of the balls and the velocity of the balls, that combination is called the momentum of that ball or the momentum of the body. So if both the bodies are having the same momentum, then they would achieve the same penetration within the sand. Next, let us talk about Newton's second law. So Newton's second law states that at the rate of change of the quantity which we have just defined, momentum, the rate of change of momentum of the body is equal to the external force acting on the body, or proportional to the external force acting on the body. So when we are talking about instantaneous rate of change, then we would say the instantaneous rate of change of momentum of the body is equal to the external force acting on the body. So actually there is a proportionality sign, but we can easily remove it, and this is the expression for Newton's second law. So what should we notice from this particular statement? First, we should know that when we are applying some force on a body, then this statement exactly states that how fast the momentum would change rather than how fast the velocity would change. Eventually the velocity would change proportional to the rate of force being applied on it, but the statement itself talks about the complete momentum of the body, and that is the first point. Second point, what does F external represent? So F external represents the sum of all external forces acting on the body. So if a single force, then there is no need to add all other forces, but there are if there are more than one forces, then you have to add them, and we say that we add force number 1, force number 2, and so on up till n forces, and the sum of all these forces is the rate of change of momentum of the body. So this is a statement of Newton's second law. Next we talk about so this is what we discussed in the last line, that sum of all external forces is equal to dp by dt, rate of change of momentum. One example which we can take to demonstrate the idea of rate of change of momentum is, let us take a block, and that block has a mass of 1 kg, and let's say we apply a force of 10 newtons, and the same block I have taken again 1 kg, and now in this case we are applying the force of 5 newtons. Now at t equal to 0, both the bodies are going to accelerate, and let us say we want to observe the momentum of the body at t equal to 5 seconds. So What we mean by the force acting on the body? The force acting on the body signifies how fast the momentum is going to change. So both the bodies are getting the same time to accelerate themselves, that is a time interval of 5 seconds. So in 5 seconds we would say that the change in momentum of the body, delta p upon delta t, that is the average change of the momentum of the body divided by, the change in momentum of the body divided by change in time, is the average force acting on the body. So we are applying a force of 10 newtons. So change in momentum of the body delta p is equal to the force applied on the body, that is 10 newtons, into the time taken, that is 5 seconds. So change in momentum would be 5 newton seconds. So that means the momentum of block number 1 would be some 50 kg meter per second. So 1 kg meter per second, this is the SI unit of momentum. So its momentum after after 5 seconds of motion is 50 kg meter per second. And as we would expect, since the in the second since in second case now we are applying a force of 5 newton on the second body, then it would only gain half of the momentum which is gained by the in the case above it. So it would only gain 25 kg meter per second, that is half of the momentum gained by uh, itself in the previous case. So this is what we mean by applying a greater force and applying a smaller force. Greater force means that change in momentum would be higher at the same time interval. Okay, so that is what we talk about, the magnitude of of the rate of change of momentum. Now let us say if forces acting on the body are in different directions, forces acting in x direction, y direction and z direction, then how would we come about writing the statement? So we would say that since force acting on a body is equal to rate of change of momentum, first we'll write the second form of Newton's second law, or one other form, one more form. So we can write the statement, we can write momentum with mass into velocity, and since mass is a constant, we'd say that it comes outside and we are left with this. So one more form of Newton's second law is sum of all external force acting on a body is equal to mass times acceleration. So this is the expression which we'll be using most often. So when we will be breaking this expression in 3 dimensions, and since the expression F represents sum of external forces, so let us break it in x, y and z directions. So we'd say that force acting in x direction, or sum of external forces, sum of forces acting in x direction, is equal to mass times acceleration in x direction. Similarly, sum of forces acting in y direction is equal to mass times acceleration in y direction, and sum of forces in z direction is equal to mass times acceleration in z direction. So these are the expressions which would be using. Okay, so let us take an example. So you have a crate of vegetables. It is fixed in the carriage of a truck. It is fixed in the back of the truck. The mass of the crate along with the vegetables is 200 kg. The truck speeds up from 0 to 36 kilometers in 5 seconds time interval. What is the force acting on the crate of the vegetables? So we are given that what is the mass of the system. The mass of the vegetables is 200 kg. and we have to change everything in SI unit. So the velocity of the truck finally is 36 kilometers per hour, which is 10 meters per second. And initially the velocity of truck was 0 meters per second. So this is the information which we know. Now we know that the rate of change of momentum of the truck with respect to time is the average force acting on the crate of the vegetables. So this is the expression, the average force expression you can recall from relative velocity, or from average velocity also. Average velocity is displacement upon time. In the same way, average force is total change in momentum upon time. So change in momentum means final momentum of the particle minus the initial momentum divided by the time interval into the is equal to the external force. Momentum can be written as m into v. So this would come out to be m into v minus u upon delta t. So mass of the truck is some 200, time taken is some 5 seconds. The final velocity is some 10 meter per second, and the initial velocity is 0. So there is a net force acting on the truck. So that would be equal to some 400 newtons. So this would be equal to the net force acting on the vegetables. Next, let us take up the example of a rocket which is lifting off the earth. Its mass is 3.5 into 10 to the power 4 kg. It is blasted upwards with an initial acceleration of 10 meter per second square. Then what is the initial thrust of the blast? So if you have a rocket, and let us say that rocket is blasting in space. It is blasting in space with some acceleration, that is 10 meters per second square. So the question asks us that what is the initial thrust on the rocket. So let us say the initial thrust on the rocket is some force, let's say F. This is the thrust force on the rocket, Ft. And what are the other forces acting on the rocket? There will be one more force, which is the gravitational force, mass of the rocket and some gravitational force g of the rocket. That would be the gravitational force on the rocket, and we are given that the net acceleration of the rocket is 10 meter per second square. So we would say that the sum of all the forces in this particular direction, in vertical direction, so the sum of all forces in the vertical direction should give us the mass into acceleration in the vertical direction. So if we want to represent the sum sign, we can write this summation sign. This sign represents the sum of forces. So the upward force which we have is the thrust force, and the downward force which we have is the gravitational force. So we have taken a negative sign since it is downward, and mass times acceleration. So we have to find the thrust force. So thrust force should be equal to mass into g plus a. Action to gravity is 10 meter per second square. That means thrust force should be some 3.5 into 10 to the power 4 into action to gravity g, which is 10, plus acceleration of the rocket itself, that is 10 second square. So that should come out to be 7 into 10 to the power 5 newtons. So that is the thrust force. So the question number 2 and question number 3, this will be taking up in the starting of the next video. So thank you for reading this one, and have a nice day.